Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission for an allowable ex parte briefing from the South Carolina Public Service Authority, also known as Santee Cooper. Before we get started, let's do a roll call of commissioners. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Williams, and appearing virtually, we have Commissioner Irvin and Commissioner Caston. Mr. Mustian from ORS, I'm going to ask you to come on up. I will note that today is an allowable ex parte briefing that the Commission has requested from Santee Cooper for a high-level overview of Santee Cooper to give us some insight into their organization and operations, as well as the statutory responsibility of the Commission, which will take place next, I believe, beginning January 1. Mr. Mustian.
See, can you hear me?
You're
There
on.
it is.
You're on.
Vice Chair Belser, thank you. Thank you to all the commissioners. It is a pleasure to be back here with you in person today, and appreciate you allowing me a moment to speak. My name is Ben Mustian. I'm the Deputy General Counsel for the Office of Regulatory Staff, and I am here today as the designee for the Executive Director of ORS at this allowable ex parte. As the ORS representative, it is my duty in this proceeding to certify the record to the Chief Clerk of the PSC within 72 hours as to whether or not this briefing was conducted in compliance with the provisions of South Carolina Code Annotated Section 58.3.260, subsection C. The requirements of that statute are in part that the allowable ex parte be confined to a subject matter which has been noticed. In this case, the issue that has been noticed was, quote, a high-level overview of South Carolina Public Service Authorities, or Santee Cooper's, organization and operation, and to include the statutory responsibility of the Public Service Commission. I would therefore respectfully ask that everyone here please refrain from discussing any matters that are not related to Santee Cooper's organization, operation, and the relevant statutory responsibility of the Commission. Secondly, the statute prohibits any participants, commissioners, or commission staff from requesting or giving any commitment, predetermination, or prediction regarding any action by any commissioner as to any ultimate or penultimate issue which either is or is likely to come before the Commission. Third, I would ask that the participants, the commissioners, and the staff refrain from referencing any reports, articles, statutes, or documents of any kind that are not included in today's presentation, to prevent the need for myself or Santee Cooper's attorneys from having to try and track down copies or links to these documents that would need to be included into the record of this proceeding. Finally, as none of the information contained in the presentation appear to have been marked or requested to be granted confidentiality, I would ask that the presenters refrain from referencing or discussing any materials over which they would like to maintain confidentiality, and would ask that the commissioners please be understanding if the presenters decline to provide such information to the Commission questions here today. As a final note, please make sure to read, sign, and return the certified statement form, which has been provided to all attendees today, and which I understand will be emailed to the persons who are viewing this virtually. I also would ask that each person please read the form carefully. This form needs to be signed by each attendee to certify that the requirements contained in SC Code Annotated Section 58.3.260, subsection C, have been complied with at the presentation today. Thank you, Vice Chair Belser.
Thank you, Mr. Mustian. Mr. Bosnell, we are very pleased to have you and your crew with you and here today. And we look forward to your presentation. So I will recognize you now to proceed with the presentation. You may want to pull that microphone a little bit closer. There you go.
Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Well, we're happy to have the opportunity to be here, frankly. So we appreciate being recognized. I do have a number of folks with me today, and I'm going to try this and see.
There they go.
Okay. And in addition to myself, I have Mike Poston to my left, who's our Chief Customer Officer, Charlie Duckworth, who's the head of Resource Planning, and to his left, Shawan Gillens, who's the head of our law department, and in the audience as well, we have Steve Pilcher, an attorney in our Deputy General Counsel and an attorney in our law department, as well as Pamela Williams, who's our General Counsel. And this is the agenda for today, and we hope we comply to your satisfaction. I'm going to start with our governance of Santee Cooper. Santee Cooper at this point has a 14-member board of directors. There's 12 regular members. You see the representation listed there. They're 4-year terms. There's a 3-year term limit at this point. There you see the nomination and the screening process, and there are experience and diversity standards within Act 90 as well. Act 90 added 2 additional non-voting ex officio board members. I'll show you their photos in just a second. They represent Central, the co-op organization. 2 of them there, Rob Hostetler and Rob Artis. Rob Hostetler is in fact the CEO of Central, and Rob Artis is the CEO of Santee Electric Co-op. All of the members, as they conduct their board duties, must meet the best interest test that's summarized at the bottom of that page. And here are their photos. We have a new chairman, Peter McCoy. I'm sure you read about his appointment and the process leading up to that in the paper. We're pleased to have him very much on board. Prior to his appointment as chair of the board of Santee Cooper, that position was filled on an interim basis by the individual directly to his right, Dan Ray, who's in fact the first vice chair. The second vice chair is to Dan's right, Dave Singleton. So Dan Ray acted as interim chair for a good period of time prior to Peter's permanent appointment as chair. And in the lower right-hand corner of this sequence of photos, you see the 2 ex officio members, Rob Hostetler and Rob Artis. The rest of the members' photos are there. They are either a representative of a county. For instance, Dave Singleton is the Horry County representative, or a congressional district as set forth in the statute. We do have one empty. Not sure I'm aiming this thing correctly, but we'll. There you go. And this is the senior management team. These are the folks that report directly to me as the CEO. Charlie's on the left. Ken Lott is our chief financial officer. To his right, Pam Williams is our general counsel. To his right, Tommy Curtis, who's the chief generation officer. To her right, Mike Poston, as I mentioned, who's our chief customer officer, and Monique Washington, who's the chief audit executive. And is taking on new duties, as I will talk about in a minute or two, to be the chief compliance officer for assurance of in regard to Act 90 as well. Monique does report, has a dual reporting relationship as chief audit executive. She reports directly to the head of the audit committee of the board, but has a dashed line relationship to me as well. You will note that most all of these folks have a lengthy history with service history with Santee Cooper, and the 2 newbies are myself and Charlie, and the caption is over 40 years of utility experience, but only 2.5 of which has been with Santee Cooper. We joined Santee Cooper just a little bit over 2 years ago. But prior to that, we worked together for a good long period of time, for 40 years, at Salt River Project in Phoenix, Arizona. There's 2 structures of oversight that's new to Santee Cooper under Act 90, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the internal mechanisms that have been put in place at Santee Cooper as well. The Act 90 provisions are listed here. generally familiar, I'm sure, the Joint Bond Review Committee, certain debt and real property transactions, and we have been active in working with the Bond Review Committee. Recently, the Agency Head Salary Commission approves my compensation. There are annual reports that are required to PERC under Act 90 on our transition from coal. Charlie will speak a little bit about that a little bit later. Any and all legislative review requests we're responsible for responding to you all, obviously, and the Office of Regulatory Staff, and we will get into the detail of those obligations a little bit later. Shawan will. Internally, as I mentioned, Monique Washington is our Chief Audit Executive, and so we have created a structure, given the complexity of Act 90, a structure internally reporting to Monique of all of the subject matter experts within Santee Cooper that play a role in compliance with all of the provisions of Act 90. And she will be the oversight for compliance within Act 90. And again, she has a direct reporting relationship to the board. Additionally, the board engaged Black & Veatch for their purposes to do studies as they deem necessary. Black & Veatch was the external engineering consultant that the Department of Administration hired as we were going through Act 95. They're a very well-known firm. I'm sure you've heard of them, and management does use them periodically for specific studies as well, but independently the board has engaged Black & Veatch to be a consultant to them as an additional layer and capability of oversight of the operation of Santee Cooper. The board also authorized the creation of a stakeholder committee to gather external input from a number of constituencies that you see listed there on a regular basis. The intention is the stakeholder committee would meet probably 3 times a year. We are in the process of populating the stakeholder committee, but the intent and purpose is very specifically is outreach to all of the stakeholders that have an interest in the operation of Santee Cooper, and you see them listed there: residential customers, commercial customers, industrial, significant utility background, the Secretary of Commerce or his nominee, and the Director of the Department of Natural Resources or that nominee. Taken together, I think the provisions of Act 90, as well as these steps that have been taken internally at Santee Cooper, do in fact constitute a robust and a substantive construct of oversight, transparency, and accountability, which is exactly what we wanted to accomplish. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as this presentation goes on. I can pause now if anybody has any questions of me, or we can proceed with the rest of the presentation at your volition.
I think if y'all would, Commissioner Urban.
Thank you. I'm pleased to hear that you already have a stakeholder process in development. And one of the items that we'd like to share with you and your executive team are some minutes from a couple of shareholder meetings, and I have asked staff to make a copy for the Office of Regulatory Staff for their file, and also to give our court reporter a copy so that we'll have full transparency. But these are just 2 examples of recent stakeholder processes that have taken place prior to commission hearings. And that process does serve the parties well. And I think that you might find it interesting information to kind of review at your leisure. If you'd like to take one of the notebooks back with you, our clerk will hand them out, and hopefully they will provide kind of a roadmap as to how other investor-owned utilities have successfully utilized the stakeholder process. The Commission's found it to be a very helpful process. Many times when the parties and the intervenors get together, they can resolve issues even prior to hearing. So thank you for mentioning that you've got that process in place, and we appreciate that. And Madam Clerk, if you'll, at some appropriate time, hand out those the minutes from the stakeholder process to the parties, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Bosnell, if you and your team would like to go ahead and go through your presentation, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and we do appreciate this input, and we will take a copy and review it. I'm going to introduce Mike Poston, who is our Chief Customer Officer, and he'll take the next section of the presentation.
Welcome, Mr. Poston.
Thank you. And thank you, Mark. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to share with you an overview of Santee Cooper's operations. I'll begin with providing background information on our customer mix and revenues.
Mr. Poston, could I ask you to pull your mic just a little bit closer?
Sure.
We just want to make sure that we pick up everything. Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right. Santee Cooper provides power directly and indirectly to approximately 2 million South Carolinians. Santee Cooper's 2020 customer revenue was derived by 64% from the wholesale customer class, 24% from retail, and 12% from large industrial. The further breakdown on the 64% wholesale revenue shows that 60% of the 64% came from Central Electric Cooperative, Santee Cooper's largest customer. Central is a generation and transmission cooperative that provides wholesale electric service to each of the 20 distribution cooperatives in the state. The other 4% of wholesale revenue was from sales to the cities of Georgetown, Bamberg, Waynesville, North Carolina, Seneca, the Piedmont Municipal Power Agency, and the Alabama Municipal Electric Authority. Santee Cooper's retail customers provided 24% of the 2020 revenue, and we have approximately 194,000 residential, commercial, and small industrial customers in Horry, Georgetown, and Berkeley counties. Sales to Santee Cooper's large industrial customers provided the remaining 12% of the 2020 revenues, and Santee Cooper provides service to 27 large industrial and military customers that have contract terms with minimum demand charges and extended notice requirements that mitigate the termination risk. This slide shows Santee Cooper's historical energy sales for the period from 2015 to 2020. As you can see, the transition of a portion of Central's load that we term the Saluda load, along with Century Aluminum's production and load reduction, impacted Santee Cooper's overall sales during that period, and the Saluda transition was completed by 2019. Sales to our wholesale and retail customer segments are largely weather dependent, so we have included annual degree days on these graphs as well to show that correlation. Customer growth across our system is largely offsetting the impacts of our conservation programs of milder weather. In regards to power supply, Santee Cooper plans for firm power supply from our own generation capacity and firm purchase power to equal our firm load. Our 2020 capacity of 5,338 megawatts consisted of 62% from coal units, 23% from natural gas and oil, 6% from nuclear, 6% from purchases, and 3% from hydro and renewables. Our fuel mix providing the 23,201 gigawatt hours of energy was more diverse, with 37% coming from coal, 24% from natural gas and oil, 22% from purchases, and 11% from nuclear, and hydro and renewables making up the remaining 6%. This slide also includes the base load availability of our coal, nuclear, and gas fleets, and in 2020, Santee Cooper's base load units all had availability factors over 90%. The next two slides will provide greater detail on our larger generation units. The cross generation station is located in Pineville. It has 4 coal units with a capacity of 2,370 megawatts and provided 26.9% of our 2020 energy. and Cross is Santee Cooper's largest generation station. The Rainey Generating Station up in Iowa, South Carolina, is a natural gas-fired station with a capacity of 977 megawatts and provided 23.6% of Santee Cooper's 2020 energy needs. Santee Cooper owns a 1/3 share of Summer Nuclear Unit 1 in partnership with Dominion, and this unit is located in Jenkinsville, and our share of the Unit 1 capacity is 322 megawatts, and Summer provided 11.1% of our energy needs in 2020. The Winyall Generating Station is located in Georgetown and is our oldest coal station. The 4 coal units there have a combined capacity of 1,129 megawatts and provided almost 10% of the energy in 2020. And Santee Cooper's oldest generation station is the Jeffries Hydro Station that was placed into service in 1942. The 5 units there have a combined capacity of 140 megawatts and provided just over 1% of the 2020 energy requirements. Santee Cooper has incorporated a variety of new renewable power generating units across the state that provided 2.6% of the Santee Cooper energy requirements in 2020. And these include 28 solar schools, larger scale solar installations at Chesterfield, Myrtle Beach, Bucksville, Orangeburg, Colleton, Aiken, and Bluffton. We have woody biomass generation with a capacity of 74 megawatts. We have landfill generation at 6 locations with a combined capacity of 28 megawatts. And we also have a small wind turbine up in North Myrtle Beach. In regards to new utility scale solar, in 2020, in conjunction with Central Electric Cooperative, Santee Cooper commenced a competitive procurement process for utility scale solar. The target was 500 megawatts, but the responses to this RFP process totaled 3,625 megawatts of solar capacity from 21 respondents for 58 proposed projects, and that they range from 8 megawatts up to 150 megawatts. In the end, Central and Santee Cooper acquired 425 megawatts of solar power that are scheduled to be online by the end of 2023. These are fixed price arrangement where we pay only for the output energy received, and the solar developers are responsible for the cost to construct the solar installations. I will now transition from power supply to our transmission system. Santee Cooper operates an integrated transmission system which includes lines owned by Santee Cooper and Central, and they are all maintained by Santee Cooper. This transmission system includes 5,245 miles of transmission lines and 91 substations that are located across the state. These facilities are largely operated at voltages of 230, 115, and 69 kV. And these transmission facilities provide service to 414 Central Electric Cooperative delivery points and 94 Santee Cooper delivery points. Santee Cooper operates a very reliable transmission system. And in 2020, we reported an ASAI, or Average Substation Availability Index, of 99.9981%, which translates to the average delivery point being without power for less than 10 minutes for the entire year. Also, we plan to utilize this transmission infrastructure to facilitate broadband access across the state with the emphasis on unserved and underserved areas. Santee Cooper also operates a distribution system, and it's comprised of 3,031 miles of line and 59 substations that serve our retail customers in Horry, Georgetown, and Berkeley counties. Our distribution system is also operated at a high level of reliability, and in 2020 we reported a system average interruption duration index of 23.9 minutes. And this equates to the average Santee Cooper customer being without power for 23.9 minutes for the entire year. And per information that we gathered from the U.S. Energy Information Administration from utilities, this placed Santee Cooper in the top 2% nationally when compared to other utilities. Now I'll switch from the electric system over to water system. Santee Cooper operates 2 water treatment facilities and associated transmission lines and provides potable water at wholesale on a cost of service basis to the Lake Moultrie Water Agency and the Lake Marion Water Agency. Both are joint regional water systems. The Lake Moultrie Agency provides water to 4 customers: Berkeley County, Goose Creek, Moncks Corner, and Somerville. The Lake Marion Agency has 5 customers: Berkeley, Calhoun, Dorchester, and Orangeburg counties, and the town of Santee. In total, more than 200,000 customers ultimately receive water from Santee Cooper's facilities. And Santee Cooper's electric and water systems are separate business units, and neither may subsidize the other. The water systems are not subject to commission jurisdiction under Act 90. Santee Cooper's enabling statute requires our board of directors to consider economic development as part of its duties. We work with many economic development partners, most notably the electric cooperatives and the South Carolina Power Team, to bring jobs and capital investment to South Carolina. Together with the cooperatives, we have helped bring more than $15.3 billion in investment and more than 83,000 new jobs to South Carolina since 1988. Notable examples of this include Volvo, Google, Nucor, Samsung, and Century Aluminum. We and the cooperatives also provide grants and loans for industrial site development and are currently developing the Camp Hall Commerce Park adjacent to Volvo's manufacturing facility. And, of course, keeping our rates competitive and service reliable are key significant economic development tools. Santee Cooper takes its responsibility for environmental stewardship seriously, and this slide shows a few examples of our efforts. We are beneficially reusing coal ash and gypsum. These are byproducts from our coal generating stations to the greatest extent possible. We also have our Give Oil for Economic Recovery, or GOFER program, and it collects used motor oil from around the state for beneficial use elsewhere also. And we are restoring wetlands at our retired Granger Generating Station in Conway and at the Camp Hall Commerce Park that I just previously mentioned as part of the economic development slide. And we have also introduced pollinator-friendly landscaping at Camp Hall and also at our Jameson Solar Farm and many of our transmission rights-of-way as well. And now I will turn it over to Charlie Duckworth, and he will give an overview of our resource planning.
Good morning. Can you all hear me all right?
Might want to pull that a little closer, and welcome, Mr. Duckworth.
Thank you. Appreciate this. I thank you for the opportunity to share with you about Santee Cooper's 2020 Integrated Resource Plan. I'll start by outlining the directional changes in our plan, and these were a result of a resource planning process we conducted jointly with Central. This work was the basis for our IRP filing with the ORS at the end of 2020. This slide outlines the key elements of our 2020 IRP. These directions were built on 3 foundational elements which are important to the development of a sound IRP. First is taking a broad view about the future market conditions, such as fuel prices and customer loads, many others as well, but those are key examples. Second is considering the consideration of cost-effective options for both new and existing resources. And the third is evaluating the evaluation of resource portfolios against a sound set of resource planning principles. Santee Cooper's board-adopted resource planning principles include the following. First, ensuring reliability. Reliability is the #1 product of any electric utility. Second, customer focus. Third, cost management. Fourth, environmental stewardship. Fifth is taking a long-term view, working to ensure flexibility and optionality over a wide range of possible future conditions. Sixth, reducing financial and planning risks, adding resources in increments that closely match resources to needs and seeking a lower capital program. Seventh, embracing innovation and transparency. These principles drove or were the metrics that we used in developing the IRP. Our goal is to create a diverse and reliable portfolio of resources that incorporate innovative technologies, improve operating efficiency, reduce environmental impacts, and result in lower costs. The first foundational direction that you see on this slide of our 2020 IRP is a deliberate, meaningful reduction in coal. It's a clear right step that will reduce emissions, will reduce costs, and will improve flexibility. The 1,129 megawatt Winya coal station will be retired by 2028, and additional coal retirements are possible in the 2030s. Second, we are working with Central, as Mr. Poston just mentioned, to substantially increase our sustainable resources. As a result of our joint 2020 RFP, we have plans to add 425 megawatts of new solar to the system, and we will add another 1,000 megawatts through competitive procurement processes as prescribed in Act 90. A third direction is to incorporate advanced technology. We plan to phase in 200 megawatts of battery storage as prices continue to decline. We have completed AMI meter installation and are on track to begin rollout of new customer programs late this year. And we have established an electric vehicle task force. Another direction of our current plan is the addition of natural gas generation after Winya is retired. Natural gas is an important part of an all-of-the-above strategy because it provides critical power system support as coal is retired and provides the resource flexibility needed to reliably integrate more renewables into our plan. Under a wide range of future assumptions, adding natural gas is the low-cost alternative to fill this need in our resource plan. Finally, our plan includes conservation and demand response. Our latest demand response program utilizes advanced switch technology managed by a distribution energy resource management system. Comparing the projected sources of energy by type under different resource plans is a good way to see the implications of changes in resource direction. These two discs compare projections of the sources of energy to serve customers in the early 2030s under Santee Cooper's old resource plan, the left disc, with the sources under the 2020 IRP, the right disc. Under the old plan, energy would have been predominantly from two sources, half from coal and about 1/3 from natural gas. Under the 2020 plan, working together with Central, we will have added another important source, 20% from sustainable resources, the green portion. We will have also balanced more evenly the other sources. Coal drops to 20%, 30% would come from natural gas, and 20% from purchases. The result is lower projected cost and 55% lower carbon emissions. The increased diversity of energy sources makes the 2020 plan much more flexible. It's able to adapt to changes in future conditions, which is one of our key resource planning principles. While the specific size of the slices will change as we develop updated plans, the improved energy diversity, decreased coal, increased sustainable resources, and improved emissions will not change. That concludes the resource planning briefing portion of this, and I'll turn it back to our CEO.
Mr. Bosnell, is that microphone on? Now it is.
Now it is. Thank you. There. Oops. I'm going to speak to the financial section. Our Chief Financial Officer, Ken Lott, had simply irreconcilable conflict, so I apologize for his absence, but I will act in his stead in presenting the basic financial information. And there are three major types, as you doubtless know, of utilities: investor-owned or private, publicly owned utilities such as Santee Cooper and my former employer, Salt River Project in Arizona, and then cooperative utilities. They're all structured a little different. The ownership structure is a little different. We are in the middle category, publicly owned, so for all intents and purposes, state of South Carolina, its citizens. We are a political subdivision of the state of South Carolina. Each one of those categories runs to somewhat different financial rhythms, and I do want to illustrate the basic financial rhythm applicable to all public power entities such as Santee Cooper. It's very much more akin to household finance. It's a cash flow basis. The principal financial metric that almost all public power entities are measured on, the principal one, not the exclusive one, but the main one, is called debt service coverage, and it's basically the number of times that you can cover your principal and interest payment after you have paid for your operating expenses, and that's what's illustrated on this kind of sequence of operating activities: revenues in the door, cash operating expenses, labor, materials, supplies, fuel, etc., and the net of that is your cash operating margin, and that's what you use to pay your principal and interest on your debt. Now, the debt of a public power entity such as Santee Cooper is generally structured similar to, not identical to, but similar to an individual's household mortgage. So principal tends to go up and interest goes down over the course of time as old principal is paid off. So the structure of the capitalization is similar to, it's not identical again, but it's similar to an individual's mortgage. And there technically, of course, there's not a mortgage on the assets of an entity such as Santee Cooper, but it does have principal and interest payments that look like very much a mortgage payment for an individual. So the net cash operating margin is the number of times that the net cash operating margin will cover the principal and interest due for a Santee Cooper is the debt service coverage measure. And I'll show you the numbers in just a second, but the number of times you can cover your P&I payments, again, it's the number one, it's the most important financial measure applicable to entities like Santee Cooper. After you paid your principal and interest, you have internally generated cash left over just like you would in your own household. That's your savings. Your savings can be the down payment on asset acquisition subsequently. That's the lower right-hand corner. Internally generated cash, in effect, is the down payment on the capital expenditures that Santee Cooper must make to maintain and expand the system. Overall, it's important to note that internally generated cash, it doesn't have any place to go other than reinvested in the system. There's no stock, there's no dividend, there's no, as I like to call it, hole in the bottom of the bucket. It all stays in the system. It's simply reinvested in the system, coupled with new debt principal. If you have capital expenditures that are in excess of your internally generated funds, you do lever that, you borrow some more money, and you fund your capital improvements. What's very important in this equation to take a look at and understand is if the new debt that you're selling to finance new assets, upgrades to transmission lines, new substations, new generating equipment, stuff that you will use over the next 30 or 40 years, if the new debt principal that you're incurring is less than the amount of old debt that you're paying off in the middle tranche here, your regularly scheduled mortgage payment, then in aggregate, debt goes down. And that's what you have been seeing at Santee Cooper, is debt is declining as we pay off more old debt and don't incur as much new debt. So that's an objective of ours, has been to reduce debt, and you will see that in our financial statistics in the next slide, now or next couple of slides. Given the background here at Santee Cooper, when Charlie and I joined, obviously the prospect of potentially selling Santee Cooper was in place, and there were a number of pieces of major litigation that needed to be resolved. And as a result of the combination of all of that, all of the major rating agencies had a negative outlook on Santee Cooper's credit rating. With the settlement of all of the major litigation, the Cook settlement being the largest of it, and the passage of Act 90, those negative prospects are gone, and as a result, each of the major rating agencies, Moody's, Fitch, and S&P, as you see on this chart, have changed the outlook for Santee Cooper from a negative credit watch, to stable. As you see in the third column, all three of them were negative, all three of them are now stable. So the credit standing of Santee Cooper has in fact been stabilized as a result of the last 2 or 3 years. There's some highlights and challenges mentioned there. It's an A-rated entity, which is a good solid level, clearly within most investors' standards for investing, and now it has a stable outlook, which helps us to capitalize or recapitalize or refinance the institution going forward. These are some of the financial metrics. The most important one, in my opinion, is the debt service coverage. That's in the upper left-hand corner. Basically, this says the number of times, again, that Santee Cooper could pay its principal and interest payments out of monies available, therefore, after the payment of its operating expenses. There's a bit of a dip in the middle. 2019 is listed twice. Let me explain that to you. The Cook settlement, as you may know, was a very complex one, but Santee Cooper had played its role, obviously, and agreed to return $200 million to customers. That .87 reflects booking the entirety of that $200 million expense to that year, to 2019. We took it to the bottom line in 2019. We recognized all of it in 2019. We wanted to get past it, and so we just took it to the bottom line. It's not going to come back to the cash flows in different years. We paid the first of the 3 installment payments last year. We've just paid the second one, and we have one more to go, but we booked it. We took it to the bottom line, so to speak, in 2019. That's why there are 2 numbers there. The 1.32 is before the $200 million. The .87 is after the $200 million expense recognition. And so we're in the neighborhood of about 1.30 to 1.40 times. It's solid numbers. The liquidity on the right is composed of 2 pieces. The bottom piece, the lighter color, is cash on hand. That is our pure liquidity that is available for any valid corporate purpose. That's the amount of days of cash we have on hand. That has been a pretty stout number. In addition there, too, we have credit facilities with banks that are standby credit facilities, lines of credit, et cetera, available to us. The darker portion on the top of the bar there is the number of days of liquidity we have access to. That's the amount of credit that we have not utilized. We have it available, but we have not, in fact, borrowed it. We keep a fair amount of days liquidity and cash on hand, just as a general matter, because it's a utility business and it's a heavy CapEx, heavy cash outflow business, and the debt service coverage as a financial factor is good, but not super robust, and the liquidity statistics are better than average. So all told, when you put that together we end up with a nice stable A-rated credit. On the bottom of this chart, you see the debt to total capitalization ratio. And while for all intents and purposes the most important financial measure is debt service coverage, which is a cash flow measure, we do keep financial statements according to GASB, GAAP, GASB, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board accounting organization, and we are able to compute thus, given our balance sheet, the debt to total capitalization ratio. And you can see it historically. Today it stands at about 75%. It had peaked in 1985 at about 84%, and it goes down and up more or less as capital expenditures are going to go up and down, offsetting. So we're not in unprecedented levels. It's for a public power entity. It's a reasonable number. Debt to capitalization on the private side of the coin, IOUs, you would probably see is at lower levels than this, but as we do not have stock, we don't have access to the equity markets, our debt to total capitalization in the public power sector tends to be a little higher, and that is the case with Santee Cooper. It's our bill comparison, and I hasten to add that this is for Santee Cooper's direct serve customers, average residential. We direct serve Myrtle Beach and in the RE County area and some in Berkeley County as well. We obviously provide bulk power to the co-ops at the G&T level. They then distribute it, so their total bill needs to pick up their distribution investment. This is only our direct serve customers, but they compare reasonably favorably, and you see the comparison basis in the footnote below. We're in the neighborhood of $10 or $11 lower for 1,000 kilowatt hour average residential customer bill. So this is a look at our capital budget. So it's the 2021 management budget presentation to our board of directors on December 7th of last year, and it gives you a snapshot of 21, 22, and 23, the capital budget for Santee Cooper. And again, as an electrical system grows, as old equipment wears out and needs to be replaced, there are new capital expenditure needs, and that's an ongoing reality for an operating utility. And this gives you kind of a breakdown of the types of capital expenditures that we have at Santee Cooper, and they're spread between generation, transmission, environmental issues, metering, et cetera, all of the basic nuts and bolts that a utility needs to maintain reliability and continue to operate. The numbers on the bottom are the total capital expenditure. We don't generate those kind of numbers internally. We may generate in the neighborhood of 40 to 50% of that internally, given that other chart that I showed you before. We need to borrow for the rest of that and spread the repayment of the debt that finances this equipment over its use life, so that the people who are in fact using it are paying the cost of the equipment that's needed to serve them over the course of time. These are indicative numbers. It's in the neighborhood of $300 million a year, plus or minus, can go up or down a little bit. And with that gives you a basic snapshot of the fundamental financial rhythms of Santee Cooper. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Shawan, who will talk a little bit more about Act 90.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Can you pull?
Closer?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Certainly. Better now?
Yes, thank you.
All right. As Mr. Bonsall noted, my name is Shawan Gillens. I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Legal Services and Corporate Secretary for Santee Cooper. And in that capacity, I want to spend a little bit of time talking to you about the duties assigned to the Commission under Act 90. As you might anticipate, there's detail and nuance, both anticipated and unanticipated, and we have not attempted to provide that to you this morning, but we are pleased for the opportunity to have a high-level walkthrough of the assignments, responsibilities to the commission. Thank you. So there are 6 high-level duties of review and approval assigned to the commission: the construction of a major utility facility by Santee Cooper, the acquisition of a major utility facility by Santee Cooper, the purchase of power, entering into contracts, what we would call PPAs, with a term greater than 10 years in length, Santee Cooper's triennial integrated resource plan, the competitive procurement process for renewable generation, and service territory changes that might be considered. To begin with, the definition of what is in fact a major utility facility. In essence, it is a facility, a generating plant, and associated facilities capable of operating at a capacity of more than 75 megawatts, so that's for your generation, and for transmission lines and associated facilities, those that have a designed operating voltage of 125 kV or more, not including distribution lines and associated facilities. So in essence, generation greater than 75 megawatts and transmission facilities greater than 125 kV, with the exclusion of distribution facilities. What the commission is being asked under Act 90 to review and approve is, in essence, Santee Cooper's application for a certificate of environmental compatibility and public convenience and necessity. We will come to the commission with those requests, and we must receive approval from the commission prior to commencing with the construction of a major facility as previously defined. So when we come to the commission, what must we prove and what must the commission find? That the facility we seek to construct constitutes a more cost-effective means for serving direct serve and our wholesale customers than other feasibly available long-term power supply alternatives, and provides less ratepayer risk while maintaining safe and reliable electric service than other feasibly available long-term power supply alternatives. And I'll hearken to what Mr. Duckworth noted as really those hallmarks of utility service. Energy efficiency measures, DSM or demand side management, renewable energy, resource generation available, long-term power supply alternatives, or any combination thereof would not establish or maintain a more cost-effective and reliable generation system. So in effect, what we are bringing to you is the most effective, most efficient source of energy capacity for the authority. The commission is also charged with the review and approval of project cost. We will file with the commission an estimate of construction cost associated with the major utility facility we seek to construct, and no certificate will be granted by the commission unless it has approved the estimated construction cost and made a finding that the construction will be consistent with Santee Cooper's commission-approved plan of expansion and electric generating capacity. So if we're not talking about constructing major utility facilities, and perhaps we're talking about the acquisition of major utility facilities, which also falls under the purview of the commission. You see the statutory authority reference there. And the high-level summary is that we're going to apply to the commission before we enter into a contract to purchase an already constructed facility, major utility facility. There is a carve-out for any transaction that might be subject to the exclusive jurisdiction of FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We have not laid out those exclusions here, but to the extent they exist, obviously FERC would handle those matters. What we must prove in coming to the commission to seek to purchase an already constructed major utility facility is similar to what you might see in the previous slide with the construction by Santee Cooper, that it constitutes a more cost-effective means for serving direct serve and wholesale customers than other feasibly available long-term supply alternatives. The commission is required to find for approval that Santee Cooper has satisfied all requirements of statute, and the proposed transaction is in the best interest of the retail and wholesale customers of the authority. So moving away from major utility facilities, both constructed and acquired, and into power purchase agreements of greater than 10 years, PPAs of greater than 10 years. Should the authority seek to enter into a contract of such sort, it must be approved by the commission. And again, with a carve out for any contracts that would otherwise be governed and pursuant to the exclusive jurisdiction of FERC or any other federal agency. It also does not apply, this approval does not apply to PPAs that are the result of a renewable power competitive procurement process that's previously been approved by the commission, and we'll talk about that process shortly. The finding required by the commission is that the proposed transaction is in the best interest of the retail and wholesale customers of Santee Cooper. Triennially, we will submit an integrated resource plan, and in that plan will be developed in consultation with the electric cooperatives and municipally owned electric utilities purchasing power and energy from Santee Cooper. You saw the listing of those municipalities in Mr. Poston's portion of the presentation. Our IRP also includes the effect of demand-side management activities of the co-ops, including Central, and those municipally owned electric utilities that directly purchase power and energy from Santee Cooper or sell power and energy generated by Santee Cooper. We file our proposed IRP with the commission for the commission's review and approval. Since Santee Cooper's last pre-Act 90 IRP was filed with the South Carolina Energy Office on December 23rd, 2020, as Mr. Duckworth referenced. Findings required by the commission on Santee Cooper's triennial IRP is that the plan represents, we're back to that standard of most reasonable, and in this instance, prudent means of meeting Santee Cooper's energy and capacity needs as of the time the plan is reviewed. Of course, no one expects you to break out your crystal ball and look into the future. Which determination shall consider whether the plan appropriately balances those factors enumerated by statute. There's also statutorily set out a process should you modify or reject our IRP. And within 60 days after the date of a final order that modifies or rejects that IRP, we, Santee Cooper, shall submit a revised proposed IRP addressing those concerns identified by this commission and incorporating commission mandated revisions to that IRP for your review and once again, consideration for approval. We will also provide annual updates on an approved IRP. Upon review of the annual update and ORS's report on the reasonableness of the annual update, the commission may accept the annual update or direct Santee Cooper to make changes to the annual update that the commission determines to be in the public interest. And a few minutes ago, I mentioned the competitive procurement process for renewable generation and PPAs thereunder not being subject to commission approval, of course, having already approved that procurement process. So Santee Cooper will file for commission approval of a competitive procurement process that meets all statutory requirements for the competitive procurement of energy, capacity, and environmental attributes from renewable energy facilities to meet the needs for new generation resources identified in our IRP or in other planning processes. The commission is tasked with considering and, if appropriate, approving a proposed procurement process that satisfies statutory requirements and is, again, in the best interest of the customers of Santee Cooper. And finally, we have service territory changes. I believe this is something with which you might be familiar. You see the statutory authority there. We know currently that the commission may not assign any portion of the present service area of Santee Cooper to any electric utility or electric cooperative, and the service area that is served by Santee Cooper must be exclusively served by Santee Cooper unless otherwise agreed to. Santee Cooper now, by Act 90, has the right to enter into agreements with other electric suppliers concerning service areas and corridor rights. Should Santee Cooper enter into such an agreement, seek to enter into such an agreement, it will be subject to review and approval by this commission. And if, after giving notice and an opportunity for hearing of interested parties, the commission finds the agreements to be fair and reasonable, it may approve such agreements. The commission shall not have the authority to alter or amend any such agreement unless all affected electric suppliers agree to that alteration or amendment. With that, any questions for any of us?
Thank you very much for the presentations. Commissioners, any questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Williams?
thank you. Thank you very much for that presentation. I have two questions. One, I believe, is for Mr. Poston, and you just referenced a sale to the Alabama Municipal Electric Authority. Could you tell me more about that? That you can imagine why I'm just curious.
That's a sale for supplemental requirements.
Mr. Poston, would you use a microphone, please? Thank you.
And Mike, I'll help Mr. Mushkin out here and just remember high level.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Help me out.
That is a supplemental requirement sale to Alabama.
Okay.
Municipal.
And Ms. Gilliams,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
were talking about the IRP process and where you were in the process with ORS. I may have missed it. I'm guessing that was the triennial application in December. What do you anticipate from the annual update process with the Public Service Commission? What will that timing be?
That falls under Mr. Duckworth for actual operations, so I'll defer to him.
We need you to talk to the microphone.
Yes,
Use the
thank you.
microphone.
Thank you. I usually don't have to talk to microphones for people to hear me. I apologize. So, but the operations specifically fall under Mr. Duckworth's
Okay,
auspices, so I will defer to him.
thank you.
Thank you, appreciate the question. We are we are working on the updating process as we speak. We will talk with ORS about the timing of this, and we'll get back to you relative to when we will file those, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you very much. As the District 1 representative who reads the paper pretty religiously, it was fascinating. I learned a lot, and I appreciate your being here. I am going to be slipping out and then watching the rest of the question and answer period in just a few minutes. So just know that I had one of those commitments I couldn't get out of. But thank you. It was good to meet you all.
Commissioners, any further questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Thomas?
thank you. Like Commissioner Williams, I'm a little bit interested in the Alabama power sale as well as Waynesville, North Carolina. Have those been in existence for a long time? Are those new, or anything else you can say about that?
I do not know the date that those power sales began. I think the Seneca was 2016, is that correct?
So they are not new.
Microphone.
They are not new. Is safe to say. I time everything by when I left the legal department the first time and when I came back, and those were from my first run through, and I was gone for some years. So those are not new contracts. But
Okay. And in connection with the competitive procurement program, is an independent manager involved in that, or can you tell just a little bit more about how that works?
Mr. Duckworth.
We believe that, first of all, back up, as we understand it, the statute does not require an independent manager of that process. We've gone through a competitive procurement process for the IRP that we talked about. It was in June of 2020, and believe that satisfies the statute requirements.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all I had, and I appreciate you being here and giving us some background. So it's good to have a little baseline starting point. Appreciate it.
Commissioners, any further questions? Hearing none, Mr. Boss, I'm sorry, I have mispronounced your name about 3 times this morning.
It's Bonsall.
Not Bonsall.
Bonsall.
I apologize.
No problem.
Thank you very much for you and Mr. Poston, Mr. Duckworth, Ms. Gillums, for being with us this morning and giving us some information. Likewise, Mr. Mustian, thank you for being here to be able to oversee and hopefully certify the proceeding this morning. We will be seeing y'all in the future. Look forward to that. And thank you again. And with that, we will adjourn this ex parte presentation. Thank you.
Can I clarify one question? Because, Commissioner, you looked a little confused by the term supplemental, and supplemental basically means we're not supplying 100% of the load. We're just topping it off. It's whatever they may need periodically. As a general matter, that's what supplemental means.
You're an excellent read of my face. Thank you very much.
Even through the mask, I could tell.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We appreciate the opportunity, man.
And we are adjourned. Thank you.